Let's begin with our top story coming out of India, where protests are flaring up in the country's northeast as the upper house of parliament has passed the controversial citizenship bill. 117 lawmakers voted in favor of the bill, while 92 opposed it. The bill stands to give citizenship to non-Muslim minorities from 3 neighboring countries. Authorities cut mobile phone and internet services to contain the demonstrations in Assam. The army has been deployed in Tripura state, while reinforcements are on standby in Assam. Critics say the bill is an attempt to marginalize Muslims. Yesterday, a U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom sought sanctions on India's Home Minister Amit Shah if the bill is passed by both houses of parliament. On to Afghanistan now, where at least 2 people have been killed and over 80 have been wounded when a bomb exploded close to the largest U.S. military base in the country. A government official says the explosion was followed by a gunfight between the attackers and security forces. The Taliban have claimed responsibility for the attack, which struck the Bagram airbase north of Kabul. A Taliban spokesman said tens of U.S. and Afghan soldiers were killed or wounded in the attack. Washington resumed peace talks with the Taliban last week, 3 months after President Donald Trump abruptly canceled them. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has met his Saudi counterpart Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud in Riyadh. Both ministers discussed matters of bilateral interest, the situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir, and other important regional issues. Apprising the Saudi Foreign Minister on the state of human rights in the valley, Foreign Minister Qureshi said the Kashmiri people have been locked down for the last 4 months. He said Kashmir's unarmed civilian population is faced with terrible violence at the hands of Indian troops. Mr. Qureshi said India isn't lifting this ban on communication to hide facts from the international community. He told his Saudi counterpart that the suppressed people of Indian-occupied Kashmir are looking forward to help from the international community. EU envoy Ugo Astuto says the European Union remains concerned about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. He added that the bloc's position has not changed in the months since the Indian government's decision on Article 370. Addressing a news conference, Ugo Astuto said the EU was following the current debate in the Indian Parliament over the Citizenship Amendment Bill. He said the European Union hopes India's constitutional traditions would be upheld. The EU envoy added that it's crucial that freedom of movement and means of communication are restored, along with all essential services. Mr. Astuto's call for a restoration of normalcy came on the day that Home Minister Amit Shah told Parliament that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is completely normal. Here in Pakistan, Russia's Minister for Trade and Industry, Denis Manturov, has called on Prime Minister Imran Khan in Islamabad. During the meeting, Manturov briefed the Prime Minister on the 6th session of the Pakistan-Russian Intergovernmental Commission. The minister highlighted the potential of trade and investment between the 2 sides. Prime Minister Imran Khan informed the minister about the improved ease of doing business in Pakistan. Manturov said Russia wants to increase cooperation with Pakistan in all sectors, including transport, agriculture, and medicine. Later, Manturov called on Pakistan Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa at the General Headquarters in Rawalpindi. Well, in The Hague, Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi has told the World Court there was no genocidal intent on the crackdown on Rohingya Muslims. In her opening remarks, she called the case against Myanmar incomplete and incorrect. Aung San Suu Kyi repeatedly termed the bloody crackdown on Rohingya Muslims in 2017 an internal conflict. Gambia filed a petition against Myanmar on the OIC's behalf last month, accusing Myanmar of violating the 1948 Genocide Convention. Thousands of Rohingya were killed and over 700,000 were forced to flee to neighboring Bangladesh in the 2017 crackdown. Now, Russia, Turkey, and Iran have expressed concern over the increased presence of terrorist groups in Syria's Idlib province. In a joint statement after the 14th round of the Syria talks in Kazakhstan, the Astana trio pledged to coordinate actions aimed at eliminating militants. They stressed on the need to establish peace on the ground. The three countries have also rejected all attempts at creating illegitimate self-rule. They also opposed the illegal seizure and transfer of Syrian oil revenues. Regarding the Syrian Constitutional Committee, they said it must be governed without any foreign interference. In news coming out of Algeria, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in central Algiers, demanding the cancellation of Thursday's presidential elections. Demonstrators said they would not vote in a poll which they regard as a charade. Demonstrations held in the capital to demand the vote be cancelled until the entire ruling elite stepped down and the military quit politics. Algeria's political stalemate puts the political future of Africa's largest country at stake. All 5 of the state-approved candidates running on Thursday are former senior officials linked to the former president Abdelaziz Bouteflika. He was forced aside by the military in April in response to the protests. Elsewhere, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has ruled out further concessions to the city's protesters ahead of her visit to China. She will fly to Beijing this weekend for her 3rd annual duty visit. Lam has refused to accept any further demands by the protesters. She also explained the reasons for her visit.
Of course, the purpose of the duty visit is to give a full account of what has happened in Hong Kong over the past year, what the government have been doing, what more does the government want to do in the coming year, and what policy measures that the Hong Kong SL need from the central government in taking forward some of our major initiatives.
Lam will be meeting the Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang on the 16th of December. Israeli lawmakers have passed a bill to dissolve parliament yet again and hold the country's 3rd general election within a year. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and rival Benny Gantz have repeatedly failed to secure a majority in the Knesset. The Israeli parliament passed the preliminary reading of the bill, but it must face 3 more plenary readings and votes before becoming law, before tonight's midnight deadline. Both parties have failed to persuade potential kingmaker Avigdor Lieberman to join their political blocs. Meanwhile, the embattled Prime Minister Netanyahu has been indicted on 3 corruption charges. Despite his indictment, polls suggest yet another stalemate after potential elections in March 2020. Well, the UK is gearing up to vote in an all-important election tomorrow as the campaign enters its final hours. Polls are predicting an easy victory for the Conservatives, but Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the race could not have been tighter. Polling company YouGov's MRP poll suggests, the Tories will win 339 seats in the 650-member House. It predicts the Labour Party will trail significantly behind with 231 seats. Yet Prime Minister Johnson believes it is far closer than it appears.
Could not be more critical, it could not be tighter. I'm just saying to everybody the risk is very real that we could tomorrow be going into another hung parliament. That's more drift, more dither, more delay, and more paralysis for this country.
Well, YouGov predicted the surprise 2017 election result. This time it has predicted the Conservative Party will win a parliamentary majority of 28 seats in these general elections. Tens of thousands of people have held protests in Prague calling for the Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš to resign. Babiš is accused of fraud and embezzlement worth millions in EU funds. Police said over 50,000 protesters gathered in Wenceslas Square in the Czech capital, carrying placards and chanting slogans. The protest group Million Moments for Democracy claimed almost 80,000 people took part in the protest. Last week, the country's chief prosecutor reopened an investigation into the prime minister over alleged fraud. Protesters have urged Babiš to completely disassociate from his business interests or resign by the end of this year. In the United States, 6 people have been killed in a shootout near a grocery store in the northeastern state of New Jersey. Police say one of their officers and 3 bystanders died in the gun battle in Jersey City. They said that 2 men armed with high-powered rifles were also killed in the hours-long standoff. The situation prompted massive law enforcement presence as local SWAT teams and federal agents rushed to the scene. Police Chief Michael Kelly said there was no immediate evidence that the bloodshed was either a hate crime or an act of terrorism.
We're not going to get into the details of 4 hours of police work, but I can tell you their movement was rapid and continuous for 4 hours within that area.
Kelly said the vehicle used by the shooters contained an explosive device, which was later removed. On to Somalia now, where 5 people have been killed in a terrorist attack on a hotel in Mogadishu by Al-Qaeda-backed Al-Shabaab militants. Police said all 5 attackers were also killed after the 7-hour gun battle. They said 11 people were wounded, including 2 members of the country's security forces. Government officials said the attack began when heavily armed gunmen overpowered security guards and stormed the hotel. Plenty more news still to come. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back. Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, has been plunged into violence after the murder of a high-profile gang leader. Residents say gangs are openly fighting for territory and extracting protection fees from ordinary citizens. Meanwhile, the country's economy is in freefall, making crime all the more attractive to young people. Cité Soleil has been considered Port-au-Prince's most notorious slum for years. Recently, many of its residents were forced to flee and take shelter in the capital's town hall when a gang of armed bandits took control of the slum. Benita Bernard, one of Cité Soleil's displaced residents, was separated from her family in the chaos.
I don't think they killed them, but I don't know where they are. I feel sick. I can't go everywhere looking for them. I can't walk. Both of them are adult. That's why I'm having so many problems. I don't know where my children are.
Haiti only managed to put a cap on anti-government protests that began in September earlier this month. But angry protesters have been replaced by roving gangs of armed criminals.
We're all here because of the gunshots. We can't live in the shelter where we were. Rats there would bite our children. We don't have anywhere to live. Now we're here at the municipal offices. They gave us some food, but we need a place to live. We can't go back to the shelter. They've said they will burn it. We left everything there, even our clothes.
Locals accuse politicians from across Haiti's political spectrum of patronizing gangsters. They say these groups were also used against anti-government protesters. According to them, every political faction has its own group of criminals.
The criminals work for those in power and for the political opposition. When they get money from those in power, they tell the people not to go out to protest. On the contrary, when the opposition gives them money, they demand people to come out to participate in the protests.
President Jovenel Moïse says he plans to strengthen the country's police force, which currently has a strength of 15,000, to tackle the problem. But opposition leaders say he has already lost control of the country. It seems common Haitians trust neither side. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has exhorted major world economies to make more ambitious commitments to cut greenhouse gas emissions. He said the human race would be doomed if the current situation continues. At a conference in Madrid, the UN chief expressed hope governments are ready to submit more ambitious climate plans in 2020. Guterres said despite being a key emitter, Europe is showing a clear will to move forward. Meanwhile, the new EU president has launched a Green Deal policy package to tackle climate change, raising €100 billion for the purpose. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen said this is Europe's man-on-the-moon moment.
The European Green Deal is on one hand our vision for a climate-neutral continent in 2050, and it's on the other hand a very dedicated roadmap to this goal. It's kind of 50 actions for 2050.
Global concern over climate change has mounted in recent months after rising temperatures caused heat waves, droughts, and wildfires across the planet. Well, in Western Austria, a tourism project in the state of Tyrol is facing criticism amid growing concerns for the climate. Researchers have warned unchecked greenhouse emissions put 90% of glaciers in the Alps at risk of disappearing by the end of the century. More in this alarming report. Tourist numbers have stagnated in Australia's snow-capped Pitztal Valley. A local lift company is pushing to expand the region's skiing sector in an attempt to bring them back. The project plans a summit station with restaurant and new cable cars.
The Pitztaler Glacier has hardly changed for the past 30 years in terms of the offer. This is winter guests' priority. It is absolutely necessary to realize this merger.
But the scheme has drawn criticism from environmentalists who are alarmed about the region's vanishing glaciers and are pushing back against the project.
We are confronted with climate change in Tyrol. According to future forecasts, skiing on glaciers is only possible until 2050 at the most. So this is a relatively short period, while the massive encroachment into nature is irreversible, and therefore we find that ecologically it doesn't make a lot of sense.
If the project goes ahead, it will add more than 64 hectares of slopes to the current 120 hectares. An online petition against the plans has pulled in more than 150,000 signatures within 2 months. In New Zealand, authorities say there could be more volcanic eruptions following the White Island eruption 2 days ago. Geological agency GeoNet says tremor activity on the island has increased, making it more likely to erupt over the next 24 hours. The tremors are delaying police attempts to retrieve bodies from the island. On Monday, a volcanic eruption on White Island killed 6 people and critically injured 30 others. Another 8 are missing on the island and are presumed dead. Authorities say formal identification and victim post-mortems are underway. Iraq has been rocked by months of deadly protests against corruption and unemployment. Baghdad's Tahrir Square has turned into an icon of anti-government demonstrations.
Protesters in Iraq are demanding an overhaul of the country's ruling elite over corruption. More than 450 people have died during clashes with security forces since October, but protesters say their determination is unshakable.
I am not supposed to be here, but we have to be on the front line to help them. We cannot abandon them. We cannot leave them if something happens to them. But we are also targeted. Many doctors have been arrested by the riot police, and we have had no news about many of them.
People from all walks of life continue to demonstrate at Tahrir Square, which has become a symbol of defiance against the rulers. But what's something new is that the protesters are feeling like home here.
We have become one big family, and everyone has their role, like at home. There are those who cook, those who clean, those in charge of putting out tear gas smoke. Everybody is part of this big family, and everyone pulls their weight.
From tuk-tuk drivers and medics to cooks and citizen journalists, each volunteer has their role to play.
Iraqis can't take it anymore. Our graduates are unemployed. After graduating, they come home, and after that, what can they do with their diplomas? They find themselves selling bottles of water or tissues. They become laborers or they transport goods to the markets. Is this Iraq? We are a country of culture, a conscientious country. We should have everything we need. We have oil and we are Iraqis, no? We have the right to our share.
Last month, Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi resigned, but his move failed to pacify the protesters, making their movement the largest unrest in the country since Saddam Hussein's government collapsed in 2003.
In Turkey, a music teacher is grabbing his students' attention by creating musical instruments from vegetables. His inventions include a flute carved from radish and an ocarina made from a potato. More on that now in this report. Shaping musical instruments from perishable items is an innovative and unique idea. This Turkish music teacher uses carrots, potatoes, radish, broccoli, and celery roots to make small musical instruments. Volkan Yaran says this is an interesting way to encourage his students to enjoy music.
My students showed great interest in this carrot flute. Almost every day, several students bought carrots to me, asking if I could make flutes for them. They wanted to hear the carrot sound.
Yaran uses an electric drill to make holes in vegetables, enabling them to produce musical sounds.
My aim was to show the students that music is everywhere in nature, so they could better feel the music.
This activity has made Yaran's class a favorite among students.
This is what children love, especially the fries. I made an ocarina out of a potato. Here is the real ocarina, and here is the potato ocarina.
Yaran has had an interest in music since childhood and wants his students to love the art as much as he does. With Christmas around the corner, festive decorations at Germany's Berlin Zoo got panda cubs into the festival spirit. Enjoy this short report.
Red Christmas stockings set the mood for twin giant panda cubs as they hang above the little ones caught at Berlin Zoo. The 3-month-old twin panda cubs made their first public appearance during a naming ceremony on Monday. The male cubs have been called Manxiang and Menguan, which means desire dream and fulfill dream. Meanwhile, red pandas at the Deer Park Zoo also enjoyed the holiday decorations in their enclosure as they discovered bamboo treats hidden inside the Christmas stockings.
The world's first fully electric commercial flight has taken off from Canada's port city of Vancouver. An all-electric powered seaplane took off in what operators describe as a world first for the aviation industry. The short test flight by Harbour Air and Magni X involved a 6-passenger aircraft fitted with an electric motor. The manufacturer said it was a first step to building the world's first all-electric commercial fleet. The pilot of the plane and the CEO of Magni X, Roy Ganzarski, said the flight was successful despite difficult conditions.
Went flawlessly. Everything we could have expected and dreamed of a first electric commercial aircraft happened. The path to here was rocky, as any aerospace path would be, but the team overcame every challenge that came up and solved it, including staying up all night yesterday to make sure everything will be ready for this morning.
We'll be back after this short break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. The Asian Development Bank has slashed India's economic growth forecast for the ongoing fiscal year. The economy is now expected to grow by 5.1% instead of the ADB's September projection of 6.5%. In its report, the bank said India's growth forecasts have been downgraded because of liquidity strains in its non-banking finance companies and slow job growth. The bank trimmed its growth forecast for developing Asia by a fraction in 2019, and 2020. The ADB's chief economist Yasuyuki Sawada said developing Asia faces rising food costs as inflation levels surge, defying previous estimates. The World Trade Organization has suspended its role as an arbiter in global trade disputes. WTO Director General Roberto Azevedo says the appellate body is unable to hear new appeals after the U.S. blocked the appointment of new judges. At a press conference at WTO headquarters in Geneva, Azevedo says it will take months to fix its main dispute settling body. He said at least 3 judges are needed to hear an appeal in the 7-member appellate body, and only 1 is in place. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump blocked the appointment of judges, saying the WTO has treated his country unfairly. President Trump has also called for a major overhaul of the body's dispute settlement system. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And with that, you're all caught up. And of course, for the latest updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching.